Hey ladies, welcome to the Lifestyle MD podcast. Are you a woman physician or healthcare provider who is struggling to prioritize your health and fitness? Are you afraid that putting your needs first makes you selfish and it gets in the way of your roles as a doctor, a wife, or a mom? Are you tired of starting and stopping fitness programs only to find yourself falling back into old self-sabotaging habits? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. I am your host, Dr. Angela, a duly board-certified internal medicine pediatrics physician, wife, mom, stepmom, and your fit lifestyle coach. This podcast will move you from running on empty and wishing you are in better health to pouring from a full cup and living your best fit life indefinitely. All right, let's get into it. Hey ladies, welcome back to the Lifestyle MD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Angela, and this is episode number 2. In this episode, I tell you how to get off of the diet roller coaster and stop overcomplicating food. To help you do that, I'm going to walk you through my 3 Qs, which are quality, query, and quantity. I recommend that everyone focus on these 3 Qs before making their diet any more complicated. In fact, I encourage you not to even use terms like diet and just focus on a dietary pattern or just nutrition or the things that you eat. The term diet inherently has the connotation that this is going to be temporary, and what I'm really hoping to help you develop is a lifestyle, something that is long-term and really has no end. So why don't we go ahead and get into it? All right, the first Q is quality, and quality refers to the quality of the food that you're eating. In very simple terms, I recommend that my patients and clients eat food as close as the way God originally created it. So if it came from the ground, if it was an animal that ate from the ground, whatever it may be, that food should be in its most natural form. Now, we can talk about a predominantly plant-based diet, whether or not you should be eating meat and all those kind of things. And there's lots of merits to having those conversations. But first and foremost, most people are really just struggling with just basic, simple quality. So regardless of whether or not you eat mostly plants or you are a meat eater or what have you, I want you to make sure that you're focusing on the quality. So that means no processed foods, making sure that foods are as close to their original form as possible, avoiding things with added sugar, trans fat, and added salt. And inherently, those things come with processed foods. Now, it's hard in a busy work life, especially if you're a working mom, wife, doctor, just any sort of busy professional, really anyone in modern day, to have access and be able to come up with quick, easy meals. And so inherently, some amounts of what you're going to eat may have some level of processing. So if you're going to have things that have some level of processing, so things that are packaged or frozen, just again, fewer ingredients. If you do not recognize the ingredients on the label, if it's not something that you could have made in your own house, in your own kitchen with your own ingredients, it's probably not the best choice. And I'm just going to leave it at that. We can have more detailed conversations about what that really means, but just do the best that you can to improve or ensure good quality of your food. So everyone's going to start from somewhere with any of these cues. And when it comes with quality, it just depends on where you're beginning. So when I really started thinking about quality before I really had a label for it, I was a medical student. I was probably in my 3rd year, and I was paying more attention to the packaged foods that I was eating, dining out, trying to do a better job of making my own food and taking my lunches with me to school and just trying to make sure I knew what I was putting in my body. If for no other reason, because I wanted to improve my cholesterol. So I was just trying to be more intentional, because prior to that, I wasn't paying any attention. So for some people, that first step might just be paying attention to what is in the things that you're eating. And that might just even involve reading labels. If you have food with labels, just even understanding what that content of the food is. It's surprising to me how many people, even healthcare providers, just don't really pay attention to the labels. Either, I'm sure a lot of people understand them, but don't even look at them. So just if you're not looking at labels, quality for you might start with looking at the labels. If you are someone who makes most of your own food, it might come down to the ingredients that you're using when you make your food. So the types of oils that you're using, whether or not you're adding sugar or salt. And, this can get increasingly complicated the further you go along, but you have to start the very, 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 very beginning is start where you are. What is the most fundamental basic thing you can do to improve the quality of the food that you're eating? Today, quality, or how I think about quality in my food, is much different than how I thought about quality in my food 10 years ago. Now I'm an attending, I've got a different budget, I've got a household, my lifestyle is different. So I'm thinking about quality in different terms. And that is okay. It's going to evolve. The reality is you are not going to have, first of all of the answers, and you're not going to necessarily understand entirely what quality means. And that may be part of the problem, is that you're overwhelmed by the notion of like, I don't know if it's good or whatever. Start with something really simple. Is it packaged? Is it processed? Is it as close to as natural as possible? And just begin there. And if that's all you can do, then that's a great place to start. That's where I start. The next Q is query. And this one actually gets a little philosophical. Here, I'm actually asking you to think about, what is my purpose in eating? Or even thought more simply than that, why am I eating? So at a very basic level, people might ask themselves, am I eating because I'm hungry? Am I eating because I'm bored? Am I eating because I'm sad or I'm stressed? And then in a higher level, what is the purpose of eating? Is to supply your body with fuel and energy? Are you thinking about it in terms of how you can heal and repair? Are you using it to maintain some fitness level or, body size? Are you trying to build more muscle or increase your strength? Are you trying to improve your endurance? What is the purpose in your eating? Fortunately, for the majority of us, eating is second nature, and it's something that we just do out of habit. And that's part of the problems for some individuals, and why some folks struggle, is that you're eating out of habit instead of with purpose. Now, again, I'm not trying to encourage you to make it overly complicated and write some 4-point plan about why you're eating and when you're eating and whatnot. I'm just asking you to be a little bit more thoughtful about it. If you notice that you're eating primarily out of boredom or sadness or stress, well, clearly that's one of the triggers. And the food is not the problem. It's the sadness, the boredom, and the stress that needs to be addressed. The food isn't the issue. So another way to think about it is, if you have a bigger purpose and you understand and you tie a value to your eating that isn't linked to your worth. So in other words, you're not focused on a weight loss goal or a negative feeling about your relationship with food. And you're focused on, hey, look, I really want to feel good. I need to eat because it's good for my body. Or maybe that you have, some really positive physical goal you want to achieve, nothing with a negative connotation. If you can focus on those things, that's going to help drive you to making better choices, just more intuitively better choices about what you eat. The purpose behind your eating may also vary with time, believe it or not. So I did a bodybuilding show in 2015, and then again, I did 2 in 2020. And around that time, a big part of my time and energy was centered around eating. And I was eating with the purpose of trying to maintain lean body mass. And so all of my focus and attention around what I was eating was really with that purpose in mind. So anytime I ate anything, it was kind of with this preconceived, question in my mind. Okay, is this serving my goal? Like I need to have this much protein or this many carbs or whatever. Now that's a very specific, a very detailed, very more complicated way to think about eating. But that was my purpose at the time. You do not need to do that. Because right now I'm not training for a bodybuilding show. Now, if you want to train for a bodybuilding show, triathlon, you want to do some ultra competitive sort of competition type training, where nutrition is a really critical factor, then this is not the conversation for you. These 3 Qs, you can apply them, but you do need to be a little bit more detailed. But this is really for the person who is just trying to get a better handle on their eating habits and trying to get out of a cycle of just going in circles about their diet because they don't know what to eat. So the interesting thing about bodybuilding or any sort of competitive sport is if you don't have a good foundation going into it, like you haven't established these 3 Qs, you may have an unhealthy outcome after it's over. So now once the competition's over, you don't have a specific plan or purpose. What do you fall back on? And fortunately, when I did my bodybuilding competition, I wasn't using it as a means to achieving a fitness goal, specifically because I didn't know how to do it. I already knew how to eat healthy and balanced. I just really wanted to do a competition. And so once the competition was over, I could then resort back to what my purpose was. And my purpose, big picture wise, is to have good energy, to stay healthy, to avoid illness, to avoid injuries, to be able to keep up with my now 5-year-old. And ultimately, I would like to stay strong and as strong as possible and, going into my later years and just remain active. So big picture, I want to be as active as possible for as long as possible. That doesn't require bodybuilding competition prep type of diet. But it does require that I pay attention to the quality of the food that I'm eating. So you really kind of have to assess what your purpose is in eating. And big picture, if your objectives are just to have good overall health, there's no reason that you need to be caught in the minutia. Now, if you want to have a conversation on how to do those things and what all that minutia entails, that's fine. But I would encourage you to make sure you have these 3 Qs, like a handle on these before you get into any detailed programming or planning around eating. All right, the final Q is quantity. Now, it's not really specifically quantity in terms of how many how many macros are you eating of protein, carbs, and fat? Or what size piece of chicken are you eating? I'm not really encouraging you to get to that level of detail at this point. Just big picture, are you eating enough or are you eating too much? And are you eating a variety? Are you including food from all of the major nutrient groups just in general across your diet? Whether that's protein sources, fruits, veggies, grains. Most people, I find, actually struggle with just basic understanding of what protein, carbohydrates, and fat are. And also having a negative connotation of oh, fat's bad or carbs are bad. Well, first of all, let's stop assigning values to that because these are all nutrients that are necessary for your diet. You really just need to make sure you're getting good quality. I bring you back to that first Q. What is the quality of the protein, the carbohydrates, and fats? And even if we're not even thinking about protein, carbs, and fats, if that's more detailed or more than you already understand, let's just think, are you eating a variety of foods in general? If all of your food is always the same color and it's always the same thing all the time, that's a great place to start. Your quantity, or in other words, in this case, variety, is very limited. So we should work on your variety. So I don't want people to initially get caught up with measuring and quantifying specific numbers, but just to think big picture. Am I getting enough variety of food types, and am I providing myself with enough nutrition to sustain my needs, whether that be, being really active, or whether that's trying to heal and recover from injuries or illnesses, whatever that may be. So if you're struggling with understanding that, that's probably a good thing for you to focus on. Now, I'm going to kind of throw things off a little bit and say quantity, although I want you to be more broad in terms of how you think about it, I do want to emphasize that for women, especially as we age, we really need to focus on eating enough protein. And I'm not going to tie a number to it. I'm not going to give you a percentage. I don't want you thinking about it in those terms, because as soon as we start tying numbers and complicating things, your head starts spinning. And that's where people go down this spiral, this death spiral of I'm not doing enough, or I don't know what I'm doing. I just want you to think broadly. Am I including some source of protein in every meal that I eat? Whether you are a breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of person, or you're like a 2-meal kind of day kind of person, whatever that is, I don't want you to get caught up on whether or not you're eating enough meals or you should be fasting a period of time. That's a conversation for another podcast episode. But when you eat, are you including protein in each one of your foods? And, plant-based protein or non-plant-based protein. It can be either source, whatever you prefer, but I would encourage you to make sure that that protein source is good quality. All right, this is where I'm actually going to put a little plug for having a plant predominant diet. Now, I do incorporate meat into my diet. I don't prefer it, mostly kind of a texture thing, but I do find it difficult for me to eat an adequate amount of protein if I'm excluding meat sources. Not that it's not possible, but just based on what my personal goals and needs are. But I am very intentional about including grains and legumes and fruits and vegetables. I will cook mini meals during the week that are plant forward and plant predominant. In fact, I'm probably in our household, when I make meals, most of my meals are going to either have seafood, fish, or plant, or be plant based, almost entirely plant based. I don't buy plant plant-based substitutes anymore. So I used to, when I was first transitioning into being more plant-based and incorporating more plants into my diet, especially early on in medical school, I ate all kinds of packaged foods. And really, plant-based packaged foods is still packaged foods. It's still processed foods. So if you're going to eat plant-based, I would encourage you to eat whole food plant-based diet. Don't eat just because it says it's plant-based or it's organic, it's still packaged. That doesn't really make it that much better for you. So processed is processed. So, okay, I'm off that soapbox. If you are not already incorporating a lot of plant-based foods in your diet, then the quantity challenge for you might be to increase your plant-based foods in your diet, or add more plant-based items to your meals, or maybe look for plant-based sources of protein. So it's, again, not necessarily expecting you to tie a quantity or number, just to do better, to add more. And that's really it. Just kind of keep it really simple. All right, I've already covered the 3 Qs. Now I want to leave you with 2 final points that are not related to those. If you want to lose weight, you should take the focus off of the weight. So if all of your focus around your food is based on your value or how well you're doing at losing weight, it's putting a very negative emotion to it. So you're automatically tying a lot of negative feelings around eating. And if you're inherently making your eating about losing weight, and that's like your main purpose, then it's just not going to feel good, right? So ideally, what I would like for you to do is just take the focus off of the weight. So if you can focus more on what are like some more positive long-term goals of eating, like feeling good and having more energy, and pick some other measures of success. So I had a patient who was telling me how she didn't really notice a big change on the scale, but she is able now to walk all the way from her living room to her mailbox and back into the house without having to stop to take a breath, whereas before she would have to take several stops. And she's realizing now that that is a much more valuable goal over her being obsessed with the number on the scale. And absolutely 100% agree with that. Yes, losing weight is kind of what is like one clear objective measure, but there are other ways to measure your success and whether or not you're making progress. And I can almost guarantee you that if you can pick some other measure of success that's going to lead an improvement in the quality of your well-being, then you're actually going to most likely achieve that other goal of losing weight. So you really need to take the focus off of the weight. And then in addition to taking the focus off of the weight, you really should take the focus off of what you can't have. When people are talking and confused about what they should be eating, it often goes to all of the things I shouldn't be eating. I know I shouldn't have this. I know I shouldn't have that. Instead of predominantly focusing on the things that you can and should be put in your body. So if you redirect the focus on something positive. Yes, I want to increase my intake of beans, or I want to increase my intake of fresh produce, or, those are the things that you want to increase. And if you're focusing on adding more of the quality foods, then you're going to squeeze out some of those other things that aren't necessarily so great for you. So take the focus off of the stuff you shouldn't have, or take the focus off of the things that you can't eat, and focus more on the things that you want to increase in your diet, or the things you want to increase in terms of your nutrition. All right. I said I was going to try to help you simplify, stop overcomplicating eating, and get off of this diet roller coaster. And I hope that I've done that for you. After listening to this, you might say, well, I'm still confused, Dr. Angela. I hope that's not the case. But if it is, let me just recap for you. I want you to first focus on the quality of the food. I then want you to focus on the query. What am I eating for? Why am I eating? And then finally, I want you to focus on quantity. Am I getting enough variety of nutrients in my diet? Am I eating too much? Am I eating too little? And if you're not sure how to approach each one of those questions, I wouldn't discourage you from trying any specific diet plan, because you need to understand those basics before you can embark on something much more complicated. And you may need or want to do something more complicated, like a bodybuilding competition or something that requires measuring macronutrients, you might want to integrate fasting. But before you do any of that stuff, I want you to start with the 3 Qs. And after you've done that, I want you to take the focus off of the weight, and I want you to also take the focus off of the things that you can't eat and focus more on the things that you can. If you found this episode helpful, or if you want to hear more about what I have to say, I am going to be posting episodes weekly. I am also a lifestyle coach for women doctors who are interested in improving their health, wellness. I really have a major passion for weight training and improving fitness. So if that's something that applies to you, you want to get better at that, you want to be able to help your patients do better because you understand it inherently. You can reach me at AngelaLifestyleMD@gmail.com. You can also check me out on Instagram at AngelaLifestyleMD, and you can follow me here, subscribe, and share. Thanks. This has been another episode of The Lifestyle MD. Special thank you to Lou Musa for the show theme music, created with Bree Photography, and makeup by Janae for the cover photo. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you haven't already, please subscribe today and share with another woman doctor who may benefit. You may also follow me on Instagram at Angela Lifestyle MD. I am Dr. Angela. Thank you for joining me today.